Let's look at our small talk story so far. You and I are complete strangers. We are both working at the same company as professional consultants, but have never met. We have attended the company's annual seminar in a swanky Central City hotel and found ourselves at the table of refreshments during the lunch break. As I'm sure you'll agree, this is a perfect opportunity to start some small talk. And so you do. You launch in with a strong and upbeat one-liner. So how has the seminar been for you so far? Cracking job, by the way. I have then responded with my thoughts on the subject before passing the conversation back to you. You then answer and go on to ask me who my favourite speaker was and why. How this seminar compares to the previous ones I've been to. All textbook uses of open questions. The conversation is really flowing, spurred on by our mutual use of W words. Now, after several minutes of good dialogue, we must return to our seats in the main auditorium, and our small talk must come to an inevitable end. Now, this presents a challenge, as we now must bring this great piece of dialogue to a close, professionally. Regardless of whether either one of us wants to exchange contact details or merely politely break off from the conversation without further contact. We must do this in a manner that does not damage the great relationship building that has been taking place. We must do it smoothly and professionally, no matter what the outcome is to be. This is the final hurdle professionals must overcome to complete their small talk successfully. To come so far through a great introductory one-liner, then through the middle of the conversation with the use of great open questions, to then awkwardly and painfully have the conversation just fizzle out, is a huge threat to your professional appearance and credibility. The final words and phrases you say to your audience will be left ringing in their ears, and thus this final stage is so important. This episode is all about finishing small talk professionally. So, let's get started, shall we? Music, please. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business English Podcast, helping professionals communicate more effectively, more confidently, and with impact. With your host, Rob, from Energetic English. Let's get down to business. Before we launch into this episode on finishing small talk professionally, you may find it useful, in fact, I highly recommend it, that if you haven't listened to the previous two episodes on starting small talk and keeping small talk going, then please go back and listen to them. I recommend doing this as it will provide far more context and foundational understanding of small talk, and of course supports the remainder of this episode. Okay, onwards. Now, as we have already outlined, in order to really make great small talk with someone, all three stages must be executed correctly. Those three stages are: firstly, you must ask an appropriate opening question. Remember, this should be a shared experience or an acceptable topic. Absolutely not something surrounding politics, religion, or any other sensitive subject, no matter how well you think you know your audience. With this opening question, it should now provide the initial spark that gets the small talk up and running, with both parties warming up. Secondly, our aim is to keep the small talk going now that we've started it, consistently monitoring for useful information that we can use to continue the small talk while steering it away from awkward questions and topics. As we now know, the use of W words combined with information offered up from your audience provides excellent model questions to keep the small talk moving forward, avoiding awkward pauses and silence. And lastly, we must now exit and finish the small talk in a professional manner, keeping our reputation in one piece and maintaining those good relations that you have taken so long building throughout that piece of small talk. And it is this stage that will be our primary focus of today's episode. So, to begin, I want to outline the why. Why should we finish small talk correctly and in a professional manner? Now, at a basic level, finishing small talk professionally ensures nobody feels awkward and there is a clean break from the conversation. This is what everybody wants to achieve. But perhaps more specifically, it is done for two very good reasons. The first is about the relationship you have built. Ending small talk correctly enables you to maintain the strong relationship and bond that you have spent time building during your small talk, setting the conditions for successful further collaboration. But also, even if you do not intend to ever follow up or converse again, it leaves things in a good professional place. Which brings me on to the second reason, which is all about your professional credibility. Ending small talk professionally allows you to keep your professional credibility intact. You never know how the impact of your conversation may ripple through your network. You may not see any reason to follow up with the individual with which you talked, but their best friend or colleague or boss could be your next client. So, as you can see, the necessity of bringing things to a neat close is essential. Yes, okay, Rob, I hear you, I get the point, it is important, but how do I do it? Tell me, what do I need to say? Well, hold your horses there just a second. Before we can talk about how it's done, we have to first decide which way to go at our final fork in the road. And what is the fork I speak of? Well, it is, do we intend to follow up or not? Once we have made this decision, then we can choose appropriate phrases to make the break. Now, before looking at the phrases for finishing the small talk in either way, we must aim to do three things regardless of our intended outcome. So our first aim should be to make our audience feel liked. The second aim should be we must make our audience feel memorable. And our third aim should be to compliment our audience. Okay, so once again, we've got to make our audience feel liked, we've got to make them feel memorable, and we've got to compliment them in some way. Adhering to these aims ensures that no matter what your intention is, your audience, the human being with which you are communicating, is not left with any bad feeling from your small talk. And it can happen, despite everything going perfectly up until closing down the conversation. You may have had a great opening question and an invigorating conversation for half an hour, but if it loses energy and eventually grinds to a halt, then all that momentum and positive energy is lost. Just like baking a cake, you can have the finest ingredients and the most advanced equipment and techniques, but if the final stage of baking is not correct, then your efforts have been wasted. So let's look at how to finish this process perfectly. Firstly, let's look at how to finish small talk where we would like to break the conversation off without the intention of following up. Now, this is perfectly acceptable and common in the many networking situations I've witnessed over the years. You have bumped into someone, you've had a great chat, but you don't really foresee any future in the professional relationship or need to follow up. So you need to politely and professionally break off. So what can we say in this scenario? Before jumping into the phrases, I just want to give you a quick heads up on the format for this section. So firstly, I'm going to introduce the reason to break off the small talk, such as time, for example, and then give you the phrases for the specific reason. And remember, after each phrase, I will leave a pause so you can repeat back the phrase to practice your pronunciation in connected speech. I will repeat them twice before pausing, as they can be a little long to remember if you only hear them once. And just a final point here, as small talk is so personal, intonation in your voice when delivering these phrases can really make a difference. So ensure you pay close attention to the intonation too. Okay, let's go. So, the first reason we could use is schedules, either yours or theirs. So, phrases for breaking off the small talk for this reason could be: right, I really should get going. I have an hour's drive home now. It was a pleasure meeting you. Right, I really should get going. I have an hour's drive home now. It was a pleasure meeting you. Well, it was great speaking to you. I'm sure you've got lots to be getting on with, so take care of yourself. Well, it was great speaking to you. I'm sure you've got lots to be getting on with, so take care of yourself. Well, it was great chatting with you. I know you mentioned you have to get going soon, so I'll leave you to it. Have a safe trip home. Well, it was great chatting with you. I know you mentioned you have to get going soon, so I'll leave you to it. Have a safe trip home. Right, I think I've taken up enough of your time. I'll let you get back to what you were doing. Right, I think I've taken up enough of your time. I'll let you get back to what you were doing. Another great reason to break off small talk could be for networking. So, phrases used for this reason could be: right, well, I won't take up any more of your time. I'm sure you want to chat with other people here. I'll let you go. Take care. Right, well, I won't take up any more of your time. I'm sure you want to chat with other people here. I'll let you go. Take care. Well, it was great getting to know you. Now, I'm going to keep on networking as there are a few others I'd like to speak to as well. Hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Have a good one. Well, it was great getting to know you. Now, I'm going to keep on networking as there are a few others I'd like to speak to as well. Hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Have a good one. Well, thank you for the chat. It's been really insightful. By the way, have you had a chance to speak to James from marketing? I believe you two would have a lot to talk about. Well, thank you for the chat. It's been really insightful. By the way, have you had a chance to speak to James from marketing? I believe you two would have a lot to talk about. Now, have you met Joanna from sales? She's doing some fantastic work in real estate at the moment. I'll leave you two to it. Now, have you met Joanna from sales? She's doing some fantastic work in real estate at the moment. I'll leave you two to it. And finally, some other reasons for breaking off a piece of small talk. One could be raising a final point through using this phrase. So, just before I dash off, a final point on what you were saying about the highway project. So, just before I dash off, a final point on what you were saying about the highway project. Another reason could be the atmospherics, like it getting dark or getting some fresh air, going inside to warm up, or even being thirsty. For example, well, it's really getting dark now, so I best be off. It was great meeting you. Well, it's really getting dark now, so I best be off. It was great meeting you. Or finally, quite simply using a physical gesture, like a handshake. Although I must advise that you should only do this if you deem it appropriate to do so. I have worked in some cultures where this would not be appropriate and thus should be avoided. Always read the room and remember, if in doubt, don't. Right, let's now move on to closing down our piece of small talk where we do intend to follow up with our audience and continue developing our network. Now, you will be pleased to know that bringing the small talk to a close with the intention of meeting up again is actually the easier way of doing it. This is because the way to close down the conversation is to make future plans. This is the reason. So, here are a few phrases surrounding this topic that you can use to close down the conversation in a professional manner with a view to meeting again. And just as before, I'll repeat the phrases twice before pausing. Okay, here we go. Okay, well, this has been a highly productive chat. Shall we arrange lunch sometime? Okay, well, this has been a highly productive chat. Shall we arrange lunch sometime? Now, it's been great chatting with you. If I take your details, I can follow up with you on Monday, if that's okay. Now, it's been great chatting with you. If I take your details, I can follow up with you on Monday, if that's okay. Well, I found this chat most insightful. Here's my card. Drop me a line on Monday. Well, I found this chat most insightful. Here's my card. Drop me a line on Monday. So this has been a great conversation for me. If I could take your card, I'd love to follow up and hear more of your ideas. So this has been a great conversation for me. If I could take your card, I'd love to follow up and hear more of your ideas. Well, I guess we'll bump into each other again at a future event, but could I take your card in the meantime to arrange a meetup? Well, I guess we'll bump into each other again at a future event, but could I take your card in the meantime to arrange a meetup? Okay, so they were all the expressions we can use to close down a piece of small talk professionally with a view to continuing to network, following up, and arranging future plans. As you can see, they all reference some continuation of communication instead of an abrupt end. So there we have it. In the previous two sections, we have explored reasons and phrases that enable us to finish small talk professionally, either with or without the intention of following up. As ever, I highly recommend you go back through and blitz the phrases and reasons multiple times so that you are fully conversant with them. This will allow you to use them naturally when you need them most during your next piece of small talk. As a quick reminder, before we close this episode off professionally, of course, I want to remind you of the three aims of finishing small talk professionally, no matter what the intended outcome. Remember, they were: we should aim to make your audience feel liked, we should aim for them to feel memorable, and we should aim to compliment them. One of my all-time favourite phrases that encapsulates this is, "Wow, well, this has been so helpful to me. I really appreciate your insights. I know I'm going to remember this little chat. Thank you so much." Wow. Well, this has been so helpful to me. I really appreciate your insights. I know I'm going to remember this little chat. Thank you so much. With this phrase, you can address all three aims, but more importantly, you can then choose to follow up or not, as it leaves the conversation open in a professional manner. That completes the three-part small talk series we have been going through over the past few episodes. So let's recap each stage briefly. Firstly, starting some small talk. In this episode, we discussed what sort of topics are acceptable to start small talk, in addition to some guidelines to keep you on the straight and narrow. Secondly, we had the Keeping Small Talk Going episode, where we laid out the simple two-step process for keeping small talk going, allowing you to avoid awkward pauses, long silences, and strange questions. And then, of course, finally, we learnt how to finish small talk professionally, where we learnt how to close down the conversation cleanly, leaving your options open no matter what you want to do. As you can probably now tell through listening to all of these episodes, small talk depends highly upon truly focusing on your audience and the topics in play. This, coupled with the phrases we've discussed, will truly enhance the quality of your small talk. Now, my only advice is to go and practice these phrases from each of the episodes so they are readily available when you need them most at each of the 3 stages. With that, I'll wish you the very best of luck. This has been the Business English Podcast. Leave a review and let us know what you think. And if you haven't subscribed, you know what to do. We'll see you next time.